All right. This is the Purple Huddle. Halftime reactions to the Minnesota Vikings and Atlanta Falcons. As usual, I am your host, Josh Fry, managing editor over at purpleptsd.com. If you haven't already, always be sure to go over and check out the sites. After the game, we'll have plenty of post-game coverage throughout the week. We'll be wrapping up coverage of this game and then moving on to the Saints as the week goes on. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, we got a bit of a game, even as ugly as it's looked at times. The Falcons lead the Vikings 11-10 at halftime. Jaron Hall came in and made his first NFL start, but unfortunately, as we all know by now, he has left the game with a concussion after a pretty nasty hit that he took down near the goal line in the first quarter. Before that, though, he was doing pretty well for this being his first NFL start. 5 of 6 passing, 78 yards. Had a really nice 47-yard dot to Alexander Madison that got them into the red zone down in the first quarter. So yeah, honestly, couldn't have asked for much out of the rookie. Much more out of the rookie coming into his first NFL start. It's unfortunate that he's going to have to miss the rest of this game because he was playing very well, but hopefully we can get him back next week. But overall, honestly, for the fact that this team is now down to their third string quarterback, they're playing against a tough defense. They're getting absolutely nothing out of the running game. They're only down by 1 point against a team that's leading a division in the NFC. Granted, the Falcons are leading the NFC South, which is pretty obviously the worst division in football right now. But as of right now, they are still a playoff team, and they have the same exact record as these Minnesota Vikings. So being down 1 point in the situation that the Vikings are in, obviously KJ Osborne's out for the game now too. They're banged up all over the place. Christian Darrisaw didn't play this game. Justin Jefferson obviously still out. No Kirk Cousins, obviously. The fact that the Vikings are even in this game is it feels like a miracle, if we're being completely honest. The guys have shown out. The defense has continued to just look incredible and carry this team. They got a really key red zone stop after Josh Dobbs came into the game. Had obvious the first drive with Dobbs didn't look especially spectacular. He had that safety, which put Atlanta up 5-3, and but now he's kind of settled in and he looks a lot better. I think that drive at the end of the first half was pretty outstanding from him. He had 3 third down conversions to lead the Vikings on that 75-yard drive, a drive that you absolutely needed to have at the end of the half. He went out and executed. Had one of the craziest QB scrambles I've ever seen, and the Vikings are now down 1. And honestly, if the play calling wasn't as conservative as it's been in the first half, the Vikings might be winning this game, if we're being completely honest. And it might not even be that close either. Because I get it. You lose Jaron Hall, and you're throwing in Josh Dobbs right away. But I mean, you're on the goal line. I feel like in that first quarter situation, you go for it, even if it's a fourth down there. I get taking the points and tying the game, but if you want to try to steal a game on the road against a conference opponent, a team that's also vying for the same exact playoff spots that you are right now, I feel like you got to go out there and be aggressive. I get tying the game up, and Josh Dobbs probably still needed to get his feet under him, as we saw the first actual drive that he took the field. But I just wish we were being a little bit more aggressive, and that only gets further driven home in the fact that you don't go for 2 after that touchdown. Instead, you settle for the extra point, and instead of potentially tying the game, you're still down by 1 point. It's very play calling stinks. O-line isn't blocking at all. Akers should be the only one running the ball besides Dobbs. Chris, I couldn't agree more with you, if I'm being completely honest. The play calling feels like it's been ultra conservative. I get coming into this game and being somewhat conservative when you got a rookie QB and then a guy you got 5 days ago. But at the end of the day, we're trying to win games. We got to win this game if we're trying to stay in this playoff picture. And the Vikings just aren't really doing that right now. It's very frustrating. And then at the end of the half, you get the ball back. Brandon Powell has a really nice punt return to get you near midfield. And instead of going to trying to getting the field goal, you instead just kneel the ball down and take it into the half down by 1 point. I get it. Bad things can happen if you try to push the emphasis a little bit too much. But at the end of the day, it's you got to be a little bit more aggressive if you're KSC going into the second half. Hopefully Hopefully that changes. The Vikings get the ball back coming out of half. And again, they're only down one, and that feels like a miracle after what happened to start this game. David says we went from the best left tackle in the game to a dingleberry. Yeah, Darisaw being out absolutely hurts the offensive line. David Quessenberry, I mean, he's a decent backup tackle, but he's not a guy that you want starting games for very regular basis going into the NFL. I mean, he hasn't really done that throughout his entire career. And the Vikings need to get Christian Darisaw back at some point. Obviously, he was ruled out with that groin injury that he suffered, I guess, on Saturday's practice because he wasn't on the Friday injury report at all. And then he was downgraded to questionable yesterday. And then he was on the inactive list today, obviously not playing. So again, the deck is definitely stacked against the Vikings going into this one without their starting QB, without their wide receiver one, without their left tackle, and now they're down another wide receiver, and then you're down another quarterback. Vikings are down one going into the second half. It's a good thing that they're in this game, but we need to see a bit more aggressive play calling out of KOC, and I think that's the main difference in the Vikings being down and potentially leading this game, and potentially leading by a pretty large margin. If you go from a field goal to a touchdown on that first quarter drive, you go for two instead of that extra point, you go for a field goal instead of just kneeling the ball down. And the Vikings also, they just need to get more production out of the running game. It's been atrocious. It's been atrocious all year, but today has been the absolute worst it's been all season. The fact that their leading rushers right now are their two quarterbacks, and neither one of them has played the entire game. Josh Dobbs has 2 carries for 10 yards, and Jaron Hall has 2 carries for 11 yards. Meanwhile, Cam Akers, 5 carries for 3 yards. He had that 1 6-yard carry, which finally got him into the positive yardage for the day. And then Alexander Madison, 6 carries for -2. That's not going to get it done. That's just not going to get it done at the NFL level. They need to get more production. The offensive line waited until now to have one of their worst games of the season in terms of run blocking, and it needs to step up big time in the second half if the Vikings are going to actually come out and pull this victory off. Again, it's a great sign that the Vikings are actually hanging around and being competitive in this game. It means that overall their roster is talented enough to go out and compete for a playoff spot. But between the play calling, between the execution and the running game, and just some of these silly turnovers too, it's starting to pop up again between that safety and then the fumble. Yeah, it just needs to get better. They need to execute a little bit better. Needs to be cleaner play calling. Needs to be more aggressive play calling. I also don't understand why they did that trick play with Cam Akers down in the red zone either. That kind of halted that drive a little bit. And you give the ball to Akers. He's apparently the emergency QB for this game with Nick Mullins still on IR and now Jaron Hall out. So hopefully Dobbs doesn't have to come out, because then we're seeing Cam Akers probably throw the ball a little bit. But yeah, that trick play was a little strange, and even stranger in the fact that it didn't just throw the ball out of bounds instead of take a 7-yard loss. But yeah, cleaner execution and just a little bit. Cam, throw it away. Exactly. Yeah, Brian, I agree. I wish he would have just thrown that ball away. It was a very strange play in the moment, and hopefully we don't see that one again, because that was a weird one. But yeah, hopefully we get some cleaner execution in the second half. Defense keep playing the way they're playing, because they've been outstanding throughout this first half. They're limiting the Falcons, and the Falcons are a little bit banged up too. Obviously, they lost Grady Jarrett on their defensive line before this game with a torn ACL, that he's out for the year, and Drake London's not playing either. So they're limited too. And the Vikings need to take advantage of that with what they've got. And the Vikings are obviously a little bit more limited than the Falcons, but the Falcons are limited nonetheless. So the Vikings need to go out and take advantage of the second half. Cleaner execution, more aggressive play calling. Hopefully we get a little bit out of this running game. And yeah, maybe we can come out of Atlanta and steal a victory on the road and get back above 500 going into the second half of the year. But yeah, I think that's about all I've got for you now. The game's about to get the kickoff about to happen here for the second half. But yeah, as always, I'm Josh Fry, managing editor, Purple PTSD. If you haven't, go check it out. Like the stream, subscribe on YouTube, all that good stuff. Follow us on Facebook. We're streaming on Facebook now too. So if you haven't already, go check that out. And yeah, I'll see you after the game.